Hello! Welcome to the Wisconsin High School Theater Festival's 2020 State 1 Act competition. Congratulations on being a part of this very exciting and very strange celebration of high school theater. I hope you, your friends, and your family stay healthy and happy during these times. My name is Simonson, and I will be leading your workshop today on how to build a portfolio. Like you, I attended the State 1 Act Festival when I was in high school and actively participated in many workshops and watched schools from all over the state perform. I attended the University of Wisconsin Parkside's theater program in 2015 and graduated this last August. During my time at Parkside, I had the opportunity to study acting, directing, design, and movement, as well as had the opportunity to study abroad at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, where I narrowed my specialization to Shakespearean and Jacobean theater. I am currently a for-hire director throughout the Milwaukee and Northern Chicago theater belt while returning to school at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater to get a secondary undergraduate degree in theater education. For today's workshop, let's start with understanding the word portfolio. This word is tossed around a lot in the industry, and it's a meaning that can vary from person to person. Essentially, a portfolio is a collection of work you've done. For directors and stage managers, portfolios are usually separated into two things: a show binder, which is a collection of all the papers and pictures from a show you have worked on, and a professional portfolio, which is a massive CV that includes samples from all your shows, examples of your paperwork, and any other relative information. For actors, a portfolio is going to be a folder with your resume, headshot, a list of monologues that you have completely memorized, and sometimes sheet music if you are auditioning for a musical for the accompanist. I'll go into detail about how we build these and what goes where later. As we make bigger moves into the digital world, even before COVID, portfolios were becoming harder to transfer from person to person in a hard copy form. That's why, for directors and designers especially, they have been shifting to building websites so they can better include everything they want. But there's still a lot of importance that comes from building physical portfolios. You want to be able to bring them along with to interviews, meetings, or have them readily available if you need them for reference. There's a lot of care and love that go into physical portfolios that I'll be showing today. Next, let's talk about resumes. A big lesson taught to most emerging theater artists is their image, how they present themselves, and the importance of a solid-looking resume. Even if the content on a resume is lacking because they're new to the field, it's the presentation that can really count. Remember to think of yourself as a product you are selling to the world. Early on in development, before you can make a name for yourself amongst the theater community you're in, you are essentially marketing yourself for others to invest in. While a big part of this comes down to your experience on and off stage, another part is you as a person. One lesson you're going to learn is people in this industry know everyone, and they know who they want to work with. A great saying to remember during your time as an artist is this: there are always three people. You, the person you want to know, and the person you two have in common. It is so essential to never burn your bridges because you literally have no idea how that can come back to bite you in the future. A resume is something that is going to grow and evolve with you over time. Starting earlier is going to be better and easier for you in the long run. If you haven't begun building one, you should start today. And if you've already got one started, there's always room to improve. After going through high school, college, and working professionally, I have changed my resume so many times, and I continue to change it even today. The final thing we're going to talk about is how to build a skills resume. These are going to be rare in the field when it comes to general requirements or inquiries, but having one tucked away might not only give you a leg up in the future, it could also come in handy if a college professor asks you to create one and you've already got one started. We're going to start today by focusing on a resume first. It's important to note now that if you have experience and interest in different fields, like acting and design or directing and stage management, you need to have a different resume for every focus. You can show your experiences in other areas on every resume, but the focus of each resume has to be specific to that focus. Actors, let's start with you. Your resume should contain three things. 1, credits of shows you've been in, no matter the size of the role. 2, a list of your education and training. 3, skills you have as they relate to theater. The first point is the most important. Since I'm speaking to high school students, I'm going to go ahead and assume most of you don't have more than 10 credits in your high school days. And yes, if you have credits from middle school on there, get rid of them. It's important when building a resume to block your credits in chunks of time. For example, while you're in high school, have only shows listed that you participated in while you were high school age. When you go off to college, you'll begin to cycle out your high school credits with new ones. So by the time you're done in college, you'll have only college credits, so on and so forth. So, since most of you have less than 10 credits, you should list every show you've been in. This means as an actor, a dancer, an ensemble member, or an understudy. If you have had other jobs and shows, like costume crew, set building, or a stagehand, I'll show you where those fit in on an acting-focused resume. If you do have more than 10 credits, we will talk about what's important to go on the resume and what isn't. The next step is listing your education and training. For now, this includes getting your high school diploma, so be sure you list your current school. You can list clubs you're involved in, like drama club, forensics, debate, or if you have some more obscure groups, like an improv or a comedy club. These, however, should be school-approved clubs that you are a member in that you are putting on your resume. Also, if you hold an officer position in a club, be sure to include that. If you happen to also be taking classes for your acting outside of school, list those as well. At this point, listing everything can't hurt, but later down the line, you should consider removing some smaller things with bigger ones. Finally, let's talk about skills. Skills on a theater resume are similar to what you would put on a work resume, but they should be things that are directly related to the theater field. For example, dance, yoga, gymnastics, painting, graphic design, carpentry, playing musical instruments, or singing in a choir are all great. You can include any and all of these things, especially if you're learning and taking lessons for them outside of school. And now, as we transition into directors, there's something that both the directors and actors need: a bio section. For actors, this is limited to only this information: your height, your hair color, and your eye color. Do not worry about listing your weight or your age. For both actors and directors, you need your professional email, your phone number, and if you have a website or a professional social media account, make sure to list those as well. It's a good idea early on to make a free Gmail account where you can pick a professional email address and have a place where you can operate as a professional without all the clutter that can fill your inbox. I would recommend not using your student email, as while it might work while you're in school, once you leave, you don't have access to it anymore, and it will be very difficult to change your contact information. I will be talking more about building a website and professional social media in the workshop I'm running later, called Website Building, if you're wanting to know more. Now, for directors, your resume is going to look similar with a couple changes. Just like actors, you'll start by listing your credits where you were a director. If you have experience being an assistant director, you will list those separately under your direction credits. Then, you'll list your education and training, and finally, your skills. Your skills, however, while still being theater related, should be more specific to positions that would be considered leadership or management. I'm going to show you some examples of good and bad resumes. A bad resume is not a lack of experience or credits. It's a lack of organization, confidence, and creativity. A bad resume would also have personal information missing and blank space. A couple other bad things would be unnecessary, unrelated, or too much information. You should be able to sell yourself with your resume on the spot, and that will sometimes be difficult as you need to show everything you need on one sheet of paper. So it's important to stand out and catch attention. Here is an example of a bad resume. Everyone take a good look at it and see if you can find some things that are wrong right off the bat. Let's first talk about the horrible border this person chose for their document. It's bad. Please don't ever do this. Next, the header information at the top is cluttered. Your name should be the biggest part of this document. Also, 20 years ago when people mailed their resumes, it was important to list an address. Today, while you're young and protecting your privacy and information, that is not necessary. Email, phone number, website, that's all you need to list. Since he's got his title as a lighting designer, he doesn't have to have his height or his hair color listed. Next comes the poor font choice. I've recently learned that the Comic Sans font is typically one of the few fonts that people with dyslexia can read. And while I'm all for inclusion, Comic Sans is not a font you want on a resume. Stick with Times New Roman or other related fonts. Then, there is a very confusing layout of information. Using your bold or italicizing options is a great way to highlight what parts actually need to be noticeable. Then, when he lists his work, his credits are in the wrong order. You list your work starting with your most recent and going in descending order. Then comes a spelling error. Always use your spell checker and proofread your grammar before sending off a resume. Also, if you're listing names of people or places you've worked with, double check the spelling of their names. Finally, this, while impressive to some degree, is not an achievement. Don't put your Xbox achievement points on any resume at any point in your life. Be proud of that in private. Here is another example. Already it's looking better. Let's talk about the good. First of all, he has his name highlighted big at the top with lots of focus. Next, overall, there's a good color scheme and formatting to this resume as compared to the other one. It's a lot easier on the eyes and looks a lot more formal. Also, you'll probably notice that the information is a lot more clear looking at first glance. Overall, this is the type of resume I would expect a young college student to have. Well developed, but still needs some work. So, what's bad about it? First, we have the bio at the top. This time, he listed his email and phone number, but he has an address listed. He also has himself titled as an actor, but is missing his height, hair color, and eye color. Next, you'll notice he has a small paragraph about himself. Now, this might be a bit of a polarizing topic, but the advice I've been given and the real-world resumes I have seen do not have this. It's just not necessary, and any information you can type in here can be rewritten properly on your resume. When directors are seeing hundreds of auditioners a day, they're looking at your credits and your headshot, not reading a little About Me section. Now, while his credit listings look better, he's got some minor errors. He's got it written in the correct order. The order should always be show name, character name, and then either the theater and director or director then theater. However, after his character name, he's put down the size of the role he had. This comes off as one word: bragging. The only time you should ever put down lead or supporting is if you are listing film credits. When you're on stage, you put your character name. Any director or producer will know the size of the role when they see the show you've listed. And if they don't, they'll ask. Underneath his training, he's got a good list of things that qualify. But again, he has some unnecessary information. Most directors don't care if you were on the dean's list, and you listing the number of roles you had while in college should already be under your credits. Just list the school, the years you attended, and the degree or certificate you achieved. The only time you should ever list your academic achievements is if you graduated valedictorian or salutatorian, and even then, some people might not care. Finally, you might see this on some example resumes, but you shouldn't list your experience levels in skills like video game stats. If you have skills, list them. If you aren't confident in a skill you have, then don't list it. You can estimate your skill level by saying things like basic knowledge, experience in, knowledgeable in, highly skilled with, or if you are certified or licensed in something, list that as well. Now, let's take a look at a good resume. First, I'm sure you can all agree this already looks miles better than the first one, and it's an improvement from the last one. He's got a large font right at the top where his name should be. Then, he's attached his headshot to his resume. This is a pro move that you will be doing in your last few years of college. The recommendation is a full resume written on the front and your headshot printed or attached to the back. But in some cases, people will put a small headshot in the upper corner of the front and attach a second one to the back. This will be something to add to your resumes once you get professional headshots done. Directors, you don't need a headshot whenever you're applying for a directing position, so you don't have to worry about adding this. Next, his contact information and bio is clean. He's listed his address again, but we already know how I feel about that. His education section is listed very nicely with credits to his instructors. Most of you won't be going to a conservatory, so you don't need to be listing an instructor in your education section. Next, his credits are listed beautifully. In this case, he has film credits listed, so instead of character names, he has listed lead or supporting. This is appropriate to do. Then, he has the director and the company he worked for. And if you'll notice, he has separated out his two types of credits between film and voice work. This is an important thing for everyone to do. Eventually, when you start working professionally, you'll be listing your credits as educational and professional until the day comes when you can completely remove educational from your resume. Or if you do end up doing film or voice work, you should separate those from themselves and from theater. Finally, his skills look amazing. He's clarified that he is fluent in Spanish and at a conversational level in French, showing that he has the skills to speak it, but being honest about his skill level. He also has his vocal range listed and has a number of accents on his sheet. I'm warning you now, do not list accents on your resume unless you have been in a show where you've worked with a dialect coach. Speaking as both an actress who has had to do accents in shows and a director, we hate it when someone says they can do an accent when they really can't. Also, if your accent is region specific, like he is Cockney listed, be sure you specify. Don't just say you can do a Southern accent. Is it Louisiana or Texas? They're very different, and it's important to list the proper information. Before we move any further, I'm going to talk briefly about your credits. This is going to be especially important for white actors. If you have a credit on your resume that does not fit your casting field, remove it, no matter how big the role is or how many roles you have. I'm not talking about you playing an elderly person or if you were in a gender-swapped role. I'm talking about if you were cast as a role meant for a person of color or a straight identifying person playing a queer or trans character. I understand that in community or high school productions, sometimes the pool of actors is slim and directors work with what they have to tell a story. However, there is a massive revolution happening in the theater world right now where people are calling for reform, especially when it comes to cultural appropriation. I understand you might be proud of the work you did for that role, but you will not get cast in the professional world if you have roles on your resume that show you don't belong there. In some cases, some colleges won't even accept you into their programs if they see that on your resume. I'm not getting preachy, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad or guilty. I'm giving you solid advice as someone who works actively in the theater scene. Now, I'm going to show both my acting and directing resume. Remember, my resume isn't perfect and it grows and changes with me. Let's start with my acting one. At the top, I have my name taking up the entire header. You'll notice I've got a different font for this than the rest of my paper. You'll hear some people say to not switch up fonts or use cursive-looking fonts, but I think there are ways to do it creatively and tastefully, like I have it here. If you've got a unique or difficult name, like I do not go with a font that is difficult to read. Next, I have my contact information. I have my phone number, email, website, and professional social media account. You'll notice that I don't have a bio listing my attributes. That's because I no longer market myself as an actress. Instead, I use this resume as an enhancer for my portfolio as a director and an educator. If you ever decide to change your focus, do as I did and still keep your resume with your previous experience. Simply adjust it to how you need it. Next, I have my credits split up as professional and educational. Listed from left to right is show name, character name, director, and theater company. Next to my educational credits, you will see the word selected. Remember back at the beginning when I said this part is for people with more than 10 credits? This is for you. If you've got more than 10, and I say 10 because I think it's a good number, you need to start selecting roles to be on your resume. The best way to determine what to keep and what to get rid of is picking roles that best show your diversity as an actor. Start by making sure all of your biggest roles are on your resume. Then, pick roles from classical and contemporary shows, tragic and comedic roles, and plays and musicals. You'll notice on mine I have a large selection of different roles that show my range as an actor. Make sure, even if you don't have the dates listed, you still have them in chronological order of your most recent role to your oldest. Then, I have my education and training. First, I have my bachelor's degree. Then, I have my certification from Lambda. Under that, I have both of my actor combatant statuses from both the Society of American Fight Directors and Dueling Arts International. Next, you'll see I've got something that's a little different. I've listed my specific coursework as it relates to theater and my training in my specialization and who the instructor was. The reason I did this is because I took upper-level classes and specialized coursework in these subjects, both at an undergrad university and a conservatory. I've gotten feedback from this being both a good and a bad idea, but again, I have this resume primarily for my emphasis for my directing field. I wouldn't recommend you do something like this until you have enough higher level coursework to add to it. Next are all of my skills. I have them separated into categories: dance, dialects, instruments, and voice. Then I have my Other section, where I have listed my various crew positions that I have had while being in college. This, for actors, if you have held a crew position, a stagehand position, or other positions for shows, is where you should put it. And finally, at the bottom are my accomplishments. This section is often debated about if you should have it on a resume or not. Sometimes it can be good to list them if they are big enough, like I have listed here my achievements at the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. This festival is recognized on a national level, and these acting achievements are important for me to keep on them for now. However, I will be removing them soon, as I am no longer needing them. And now I'll show you my directing resume. You'll notice it's both similar and different looking. With most directing or designer resumes, they're gonna look a lot more formal. But there are ways you can still keep it unique to you. Again, at the top, I've got my name nice and large, and underneath it, I've got my title as director. Next, here's all my contact information, and again, since I'm a director, I don't need my attributes listed. Next, I've got my selected experience. You'll notice I do have my dates listed here, as it's important for directors to show how often they are working. I have a little key here listed at the bottom right to denote class projects or works currently in progress. Soon, I will be able to remove my class projects completely off my resume. Next, I've got my education as it's relevant to my directing. And finally, I've got my skills. You'll notice that they are different than the skills I had listed on my acting resume. These are skills that are relevant to leadership positions and my directing experience. I also have my Premiere Pro video editing skills because, since we have switched to a virtual experience, I have been working as a for-hire production editor as well. Now, after all of that, I hope you have a very good understanding of what a resume is. Just to recap, remember to think of yourself as something you want to market to others. Make your list of everything you have done on or off stage and anything related to theater. Set up your free professional Google account so you can build your resume in your Drive and create your email. Gather any and all information required you need for your resume. Avoid those ugly designs we saw as examples for resumes today. And remember to grow and adjust your resume with you. It's not going to be pretty or perfect for a long time, so just begin at the beginning. Now we're going to talk briefly about a skills resume. A skills resume is a document dedicated to showing off your skills only. Its main goal is to showcase your work ethic. In it, you'll list features from both your theater and your work field life. A skills resume is a hybrid of both. It's important to note that a skills resume is rarely used or asked for as a requirement. However, having one on hand could come in handy. It's also a unique way to show off another side of you as an artist and a person. Let's talk about the features of a skills resume. First, you're going to start by making a list of all your skills and attributes as a worker. Things like your leadership skills, your knowledge of computers, and if you have experience with phone or cash handling. After that, pick 2 or 3 work experiences to highlight on your resume that show off the expanse of your work knowledge. Next, list your education experiences, but only ones that offer a degree or certificate for your education and training. You should then list your leadership positions, like if you hold an officer position in a club. Finally, you should have at least 2 references. These should preferably be one from a theater and one from a job. Make sure you alert your references before putting them onto a resume. Here's mine split in half so we can read it clearly. A skills resume should fit on 1 page. Here's mine split in half so we can read it clearly. A skills resume should fit on 1 page. You'll notice this is very dull looking in comparison to the others we viewed today. A skills resume is going to be a lot of information and very little creativity. At the top, I've still got my name listed big and bold, and here are my skills and abilities. I've got both artistic and real-world attributes listed. Then I have my experience. My skills resume is a little outdated, so I have my 2 jobs I held at the time I created this. I have the date I held the position, the name of the company I worked for, location, and the title of job I held. Then, with each job, I have a short paragraph describing what my responsibilities at the job were. You can use this as a good opportunity to show off the work you did. Then comes your education section. List the dates you attended, the name of the school, the location, and what kind of degree or certificate you earned. Make sure you also include your GPA if applicable. Under that should be your leadership positions. And finally, your references. You can put your contact information anywhere you like, I just listed mine at the bottom. Now we're done with the skills resumes, so let's move on to portfolios. For the directors, I'm going to show you both a physical copy and a digital copy of a show portfolio. When we begin with a physical copy, we want to start with collecting everything into a sturdy binder and have your papers in sheet protectors. First, start with a title page that lists the title of the show, the author, and the director. If you had an adapter, include them as well. After your title page, you should have your cast list. Make sure you spell your actors' names correctly. Always remember to use page dividers to separate your sections. The next section should be your script in full. It should be clean with no writing or marks. If it's a fully produced show, with each of your script pages, you should include blocking sheets if you aren't working with a stage manager. It should be a rough drawing of the set and lines underneath for you to write clearly. Depending on your script, you might not need to have a blocking sheet for every page. In the beginning, it's going to feel like a lot of printing and a lot of writing, but you'll come to find what's important for your show portfolio. Here's a good example of my blocking writing. I have my actors' names written down, and then I have labeled my entrances and exits for my set. On the lines below, I have written what my actors are doing corresponding to what line they do it on. Other directors and stage managers will have different ways of creating blocking sheets. You can use what's best for you, just make sure it's legible and translatable. Let's move on to our next section. For my portfolio, I've got my choreography that I did. I printed out a rough outline of the movement pieces along with the title of the track I used for future reference. Then I have my production photos. These are photos I chose that best showed off my actors in interesting and dynamic positions. They should be full body shots that include any costumes and your set. Try to include as many actors as you can. Next come my rehearsal reports. I have the date, location, who is present, and what we were working on that day. Then I listed the goals I had for rehearsal, what we accomplished, what the schedule is for the next rehearsal, and anything left I had to do from that day. Then I have a brief section I used to reflect on how rehearsal went. It's good to be able to write down observations you had from the day so you can refer back to things that worked for you and what didn't. Again, if you're working with a stage manager, you can obtain copies from them, or you can create your own. Then, I have a special section devoted to the character work we did for our production. If you end up doing table work or character work with your actors, always keep your paperwork. Next, I've got all of my design concepts I created for the show. Since this is the binder of my senior capstone project, I did all the designs myself. All of my designs have a brief description of my design and reference photos. I have a scenic design along with a ground plan, my props design, my sound design, my lighting design, and finally, my costume design. If you ever have input about a design for a show, you should always find a way to write it and add it to your portfolio. You can also always include photos, references, or design concepts if you have worked with the designer. Just be sure to credit them appropriately. Then comes my dramaturgy. Even if you work with a dramaturg, you should still do your own work and your own research. Look up vocabulary of words your actors might not know, quotes, and literary references. You can also do research of famous actors who have also played these roles from your show in the past. Now, let's take a look at a digital copy. You should keep everything stored in a Google Drive folder. It's easy to send off to people and it saves your work for free. You can see I've got a lot of little folders acting as my page dividers. I'll start by showing you a calendar layout. I find blank calendars off of the internet and I have adjusted them to add a schedule for our production. Monthly calendars like this are great to send out to your actors on day one. Even though their time should fully be committed to you when they start, it's best for them to not have any surprises. Next, I'll show you my folders where I hold my rehearsal schedules. Just like your reports, you're listing your date, location, and tasks for that day. But you get to use it as a breakdown for your talking points and give you a better guide of how to walk through your day. Remember to always make a matching rehearsal report for your day. Then comes the scripts. If you work on a show where you can edit the script, always keep an original copy to refer back to. And then make clear and concise script edits to send out to your actors so they can adjust accordingly. Make sure you keep every edited version of your script so you can track your progress and adjust if you need it. Finally, you should have an Other folder where you can put all of your extra work done. I have all of my research for my dramaturgy I sent to my actors. I also have my ground plan for my blocking, my run notes from our first run, and sheet music for our composed copy of the lullaby. The things in this folder might vary from show to show you work on, but always be sure to keep everything you've done. Now, actors, let's talk about your portfolio. Your resume requirements should be as follows. It should be printed on resume paper or photocopy paper. You can find both of these options in printing centers like FedEx Kinko's. Your resume should also fit on an 8x10 sheet of paper. If you can't print it to a sheet that size, you can always adjust your borders on a Google Doc to fit these parameters and cut the paper. Then make sure your headshot is also on an 8x10 size piece of photo paper and either printed on the back of your resume or securely attached. This can be staples in all four corners or using a lot of double-sided tape. You don't want a director to accidentally lose your headshot if it becomes detached from your resume. Finally, always bring multiple copies to an audition. Typically, in a standard audition, you'll have the director, an assistant director, and a producer in the room. It's safe to always have between 3 to 5 copies. Then, your audition folder is something you should always have with you, but don't always expect to use it. First, always store your resumes in there. Then, just have a single copy of your skills resume in case they ask for it, but you'll find they often won't. Then, you'll have your list of monologues, and finally, your sheet music that you should have for musical auditions. Your list of monologues in the industry is called a monologue morgue. A monologue morgue is a collection of various monologues actors have memorized that they can use on cue in auditions. They should be monologues you are entirely familiar with and have worked on extensively. Your morgue is going to be a sheet of paper with all your monologues listed. They should be a collection of about 5 to 15. Your list should have a character name, show name, and the author. Your monologues should be varying in style when you pick them, and always choose well-known authors. You don't have to pick a popular show, but don't pick any authors who are too little known or anything written by you or a friend. Here's a good example of what a morgue should look like. I've got a list of varying roles and style. Some are comedic, some are tragic, some are contemporary, and some are classic. I've even got a monologue from a musical listed at the bottom. Again, these are monologues that you are so familiar with that anyone can ask you to perform it spotless on command. Never list a monologue on a morgue sheet if you're not 150% confident. Now, if you decide to add sheet music, pick 3 or 4 different songs in different styles that show your vocal range. Get a simple piano arrangement of the songs you choose. That way, any hired accompanist should be able to play it without issue to you. Settle on a good 16 to 48 bars of a song that you can print separately or annotate in your music for your accompanist to start and stop at. Again, like I said before, find songs within your casting range. If you are a white actor, please do not pick a song from The Lion King. Think of pieces that are going to highlight your talent as a singer. You can go so far as to pick more complex songwriters like Stephen Sondheim if you have the experience. But even if you have all of these tucked away, still remember to always come prepared with what they ask of you first. So, as a nice summary of everything we've talked about, remember to keep all of your paperwork. You can always print it later if you want to, but hold on to it digitally. A Google Drive is always the best way to go. And for everyone, organization is the most important thing. Make sure you always look as good on paper as you do in person. Keep track of all parts of your portfolio as it will become increasingly difficult to find and adjust things you might need later. Remember, your portfolio will grow and change with you as an artist. Update it with bigger and harder projects to show off your skill as a developing artist. Finally, for actors, begin putting work into your monologue morgue ASAP. The sooner you start working and learning these monologues, the better you will be when auditions come around. And as you grow, you can always remove and add new ones. Well, that's it. I hope everyone learned a little about resumes and portfolios today. Remember, my input is just one in a million. You'll always get different and better advice from others. I'm relaying to you the things I see working in the industry today. And don't be freaked out if this felt like an information overload. Starting small always brings you to bigger and better things. Remember to keep working and worshiping your art. It will take you further than anything. Thank you all for joining me today. If you ever have questions or want help or advice on building your image, I am reachable through my website, my professional email, or via my professional social media account. And if you like today's workshop, I do more in person. If any of your teachers would ever like to book me for workshops, I do professional development sessions, Shakespeare and Jacobean theater, and tons of other fun things. Don't be afraid to reach out. Again, congrats on making it to the Wisconsin High School Theater State One Act Festival. I hope you all have fun watching people from all over the state perform and learn. Break a leg!